This is it here, right here?
This is it. It was right here. They've added on tremendously. This is where the staircase was originally. And you can see Gary's car parked right here.
Right. This was a much smaller home in July of 1969 where Gary Hinman lived. And Gary was a musician, a Buddhist, lived a fairly quiet life.
He was friends with everybody in Topanga Canyon, and he would let people come in and stay. Remember, it was a different time. It was more of an open door policy thing, and come on in, we'll feed you.
Bobby Beausoleil at the time was a 19-year-old musician. He played in a band called the Milky Way. This was in July now of 1969. When he came to this house, Gary Hinman let Bobby Beausoleil in, along with some of the other girls in the family. And Charles Manson thought that Gary Hinman had come into an inheritance of about $20,000. And so Manson had directed Bobby Beausoleil and the girls to come over to this house and to get that $20,000 in inheritance. Turns out Gary Hinman didn't have any money, or had very little money. He had a couple of old cars and, you know, a couple of bucks, but not the $20,000, which Bobby Beausoleil and the girls found out fairly soon. Wow, it's interesting looking up at this and thinking, yeah, this was nearly 50 years ago. It all started here.
Yeah.
This is where it started.
Exactly.
Charles Manson wanted to do something, he said, less messy. That was his quote. They drove around, they went to a church, they went to another house where Manson looked in and he saw pictures of little kids and said he didn't want to go in there. And then they came to the LaBianca's house. That particular day, the couple had been out on their boat. They'd been out on the lake.
On the lake, right?
On the way back, they stopped to get a newspaper where Rosemary heard about what had happened the night before. Started crying, apparently, sort of exclaiming, how could anybody be so cruel? Obviously, she found out later that night. But let's take a walk up Waverly.
Sure.
Okay? What was clear is that Charles Manson was here, that he went in here, he was with Tex Watson, that they patrolled this, they were looking for victims after the Sharon Tate murders the night before. Manson went in, he told the LaBiancas, we're here just to rob you, not to hurt you, and then left.
Right.
One thing I think that's so interesting is that Rosemary would say that when they would go to the lake on their boat, that she'd feel like there were people in her house while they were away. She had this creepy feeling. And maybe that's because Charles Manson and his followers were there. That's because they'd leave the doors open. But that wasn't unusual in that time because it was pre-Charles Manson. It was pre the summer of 1969. And gates like this just didn't exist. People didn't have home alarm systems. They left their doors open because it was prior to Charles Manson and the horrible things that happened summer of 1969.